Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OX.Security teaser. We hope the outcome of this event will compel you to be more interested in OX than you are right now, obviously, and perhaps request a deep dive into our solution relative to your exact needs. So to begin with, my name is Dana Bureau. I'm responsible for the go-to-market here in the Americas for OX.Security. We're a rapidly growing Tel Aviv-based software cybersecurity company. So with me today is Boaz. I'll let Boaz introduce himself, please.
Thank you, Dana. My name is Boaz Barzel. I'm leading the sales and technical enablement at OX.Security. I live near Tel Aviv, so kind of near the home base. And one thing that you didn't know about me, or maybe you did, I'm really into camping, hiking, and coffee. Yes, all three together. So we can also talk about it later on. And a few action items for you. Feel free to send us questions during the webinar. We'll be happy to answer, mostly, of course, about OX. And afterwards, we can talk about other topics. So let's kick in and start with our presentation. We kept the presentation to a minimum, and we're going to actually go through the different aspects. Let me start with kind of the first area where we want to set up what we're going to talk about. And looking at this slide, if you can kind of look at the threat landscape, and what we're seeing is that in the past year, it actually evolved. And what we see that a lot of attacks that are causing financial and reputational damage have started to appear around the software supply chain. A few reports, like the one from 2021, indicated that around 62% of organizations at the report faced a software supply chain attack. And so organizations are now starting to look more at securing their software supply chain, their development areas. Even Gartner predicts that by the year 2025, 45% of organizations worldwide would have experienced attacks on their software supply chain. So this is something that we're seeing as evolving, and we want to make sure that you have the tools and the abilities to address some of these challenges. If you look at another area, is that when we're seeing that organizations that are investing in DevSecOps practices, which also integrate the security into the software development process, actually deployed code much faster. So what we're seeing today in the threat landscape is that a lot of areas around the software supply chain security have different fragmented workflows, as an example, different tools that create a lot of noise and silos. If I move next to the next area, we can see that the application security journey, or the DevSecOps journey, is based on different maturity models. So not everyone has the same point today in time, where some of the desired outcomes can be as simple as starting from asset discovery to understand what I have, and for example, which open source packages am I using in that code, which applications are deployed into production, and so on, to moving up the chain, moving to understand the coverage, having some sort of a central visibility, then prioritizing, triaging the most relevant or riskiest security issues, until I can eventually automate that process and have the development integrated with security much more agile and fast. Now, the second area, if you look kind of to the right of the slide, we're talking about the developer buy-in. Because sometimes when we're starting adding more tools around security, especially DevSecOps, then we might create friction, or we create friction with the development side. And that friction reduces the agility to deploy faster and jeopardizes the organization's competitive edge. So if I want to stay competitive, especially in this time and market, I must keep my business edge. And to do so, I have to streamline the process of security and development together. When I have noisy tools, when I have fragmented workflows, when nothing really clicks together, it takes a lot more time, a lot more headaches for the teams, and we don't really understand what they want from us or why our development are not developing more securely. I know that Dana has something to say about that as well.
No, I think what I'd like to show is just, let's get into the demo, because I think what we enjoy so much about OX is that it shows very well. In many cases, when you meet us on a one-on-one environment, we go right to the OX dashboard. And this is the OX dashboard. And as Boaz said or mentioned, we're on this ambitious journey to enable continuous and eventually autonomous end-to-end software supply chain to security, from your very first line of code or Jira ticket to the cloud and back again, being able to dynamically trace it across this pipeline bill of materials, that's what we call it, front to back and then back to front. And that's what we're going to discuss more today. I think what's important here is, and the feedback we're getting is that once companies and leaders see OX, they often say that OX helps applications security explain the why to development. and builds confidence and trust in their DevSecOps programs and starts to bridge the important gap between application security and development, which is critical to any DevSecOps program and maturing that program. So, I'd like to say, welcome to Ox. This is your single central view, and this is what we believe every software supply chain or pipeline bill of materials, we like to call it, should look like. From this single view, you can begin tracing your code journey from its very beginning to the cloud and back again, ensuring that all the code comes from software builds that are both secure and trusted. And I think the challenge we start to address, and Boaz was mentioning this, of course, is that we address the challenges of fragmented workflows that are typically created by noisy and siloed tools that work at certain points in times in the software supply chain. And we know that these challenges compromise developer agility and velocity and widen the gap, right, between application security and development. And I think we've course corrected or started to on that problem. And from this single view, you are 1 or 2 clicks away from your vulnerabilities that are fully contextualized and prioritized based on risk impacts. 2, they are automatically consolidated and triaged. And 3, they're presented to you in a unified and industry standardized language that DevSecOps and development both understand. And that's the vision of Ox. So how does Ox work? First, we are a series of connectors, and I'll quickly go to the applications tab here, or the admin tab, to show you some of the connectors we offer. We'll get back to this in the deep dive, but we have 90 plus connectors, and we're constantly adding connectors based on customer demand and needs. As part of the connections, step 1 is to connect to your existing operating systems or infrastructure. So on the chart here, or on the dashboard, this would be your source control, your CI/CD, your registry, and cloud. This allows you to begin tracing the code and the state of the code across the pipeline bill of materials to the logical applications the code may belong to, or may not belong to in some cases. The criticality of the code is enriched by such factors as the estimated application business priority and the operating system posture. What does that mean? So we look at in detail the data coming from source control and the application flow to understand aspects of the application the code's part of. It could be aspects such as change velocity, number of internal, external developers, number of PRs, and just overall activity in the code. That should factor in and weight into what you should fix first if vulnerabilities arise in code. Secondly, we look at operating system posture. So we assess your controls and aggregate that information, looking at code leakage, review information, any shadow engineering, or even third-party activity. Introductions of new open source packages. All of this information is aggregated from your existing infrastructure and operating systems that you use today to tell one part of the story about the code. Secondly, we start to connect to the controls that you use to manage your security posture. These are the controls along the top here, pointing to the central view of the pipeline bill of materials. And when you enable, for example, your Git or your source control here, you get automatically out of the box all of Ox's controls. So we offer up a scan based on optimized open source that allows you to achieve 100% coverage of your software bill of materials based on connecting to the operating systems. That's the first part of it. Secondly, we know many of you have invested in existing tools, right? Those are either commercial or open source. We also connect to many of the major commercial players on the market. For example, here you can see our connection to Sneak as part of SCA, along with Ox and in this case, Trivi, an open source package. The point being is we want to aggregate your existing investments along with any open source packages. And then for companies, and this is usually the case, that feel they have a gap in their security posture, we offer a comparable solution to stopgap immediately in the supply chain. So that is step two, connecting to the controls. Step one gives you the application flow of that code, or the flow of the code, and what it is a part of in your pipeline bill of material. Step two allows you to begin tracing what's happening to the code, the changes that's going on in the code, and who is making those changes to the code. Thirdly, and this is, I think, where trust starts to get built into the Oculus program, and I'm going to scroll down for you here. We're going to introduce to you Oscar. Oscar, or I should say OX, is the only solution standardized on a known framework for open source software supply chain attacks. That framework is called Oscar, and we can share more information about that later. It is a subset of MITRE, and it maps all of your visibilities to the tactics, techniques, and procedures used by adversaries in over 300 known open source security attacks, many that you know today. Oscar was conceived by leading experts from companies like Checkpoint, MITRE, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, and others. And after evaluating 300 plus open source attacks, concluded the following. First, on average, the vulnerabilities that contributed to the attacks would have taken 4 tools to find. We know that many companies don't have 4 tools, right? Secondly, those 4 tools would have had to been fully orchestrated to work together to find those vulnerabilities and the risk. And we know that many of the tools available today are just noisy and siloed. They're not orchestrated to work in concert. And 3, they discovered or realized that a superhuman would have to been available on your team, present to interpret the findings from the tools and have been able to orchestrate all these tools. And the promise of OX is that we're purpose-built to help solve that problem, and we're building, daily on that journey. Finally, I'll go back to the top here and just introduce one part of the program. I think the last step in that DevSecOps journey is what we like to refer to as policy as code. Implied in OX is an ability to create standards or policies for your organization based on your maturity model. In this particular development environment, I've chosen to monitor certain factors of my software supply chain. But I could also go a step further, that when anything occurs that is out of the ordinary, I'm able to create policy to alert or even take a step further and block the CI/CD. So that is the OX dashboard, centered on this central pane where you can see a very dynamic view of what your pipeline bill of materials could look like. We've connected a number of tools here. This is our tools that come along the ride automatically, along with your existing investments, either commercial and open source. We've aggregated and contextualized all this information and prioritized it so that there's much fewer errors, or vulnerabilities that need to be addressed. And finally, we layered on top of that this framework called Oscar, which we think helps to build trust and credibility around this OX dashboard. So that said, I'll kick it back to Boaz. Thank you very much. Boaz, maybe you can take a few clicks in and show some of the deep dive information. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dana. What we're going to do right now is I'll be sharing the screen. And as you can see, we're using very similar environments. What you can see in front of you is what Dana shared with you. And the first thing I'd like to focus on is really the PBOM standard that we're using. So in order to understand the platform better, and from this, the environment that your environment, that your that you want to investigate, that you want to understand which issues arise in every step of the software development lifecycle, is you're looking at the PBOM and you're seeing the categories. So the first thing that we're doing is we're normalizing a lot of the data from different tools, orchestrating, consolidating it together, and then we're able to show you exactly which are the areas where the riskiest issues are that you want to solve. So we can start with looking at one of the topics. Let's take open source security as an example. If I want to deep dive into the open source security, by clicking that, I can see all the different issues categorized by severity, and I can start looking at those 4 here. So it really helps us to understand, okay, those 4 are 4 critical events, but since we are consolidating, each of these events in other tools will be multiply of CVEs, basically, or different events. This is an example where I have an open source package. This is actually 10 different issues or alerts that I will get from multiple tools. So the first thing we can see here is that we are consolidating the finding. We're visualizing everything for you as part of our pipeline build materials. And when we deep dive, we have a better understanding because we're bringing the intelligence to you. We're helping you to automatically triage the issue. Now it's consolidated. And from here, it's very easy, even if I'm not as experienced in security, if I am coming from the development side and I'm not really sure why my code is not secure, or why is this package such a bad thing to bring into my application. Now I have all the information. So from here, looking at the description, I can see that we're also bringing the recommendation, which means that we're helping you to understand that in this case, if you're going to upgrade to 6.09, it's going to solve the direct vulnerabilities and the indirect vulnerabilities. So we're helping you by building a graph, in this case, of all the indirect packages that are bringing in indirect vulnerabilities and showing you which package will actually solve this for you. We talked about streamlining here, okay? So that means that from here on, I can just click and open a pull request, a PR, directly from the system. Or if I don't want to do it from here, I can just integrate it and directly open a Jira ticket. You can see that we're also bringing the developer. So you don't have to go around and start looking for the owner, the developer. We're consolidating the data and bringing directly into the system. So it's very, very simple to have a cross-functional program or process through the application. You can send a Slack message in this case. You can even exclude or snooze the issue. Let's say this should be in the next sprint, then we can just snooze it for a later time. So let's get back to how we're looking on this package from an Oscar perspective. So I'll take the dashboard view, and going back to Oscar in this case and the importance of it. So first of all, as you can see, we can show you the risk level, the exposure that you have based on different tactics and techniques that are maps, basically a MITRE-like or a subset of MITRE based on the Oscar framework here. And let's say you're doing a research, or you've read an article. Let's take a use case. You've read an article about a company similar to yours. The attacker has used command injection to breach the organization. And you have a concern around, okay, where I am vulnerable for command injection. So without using any kind of framework, it will take going over all of your thousands or tens of thousands of issues, trying to understand what is command injection. Or in this case, just clicking here on command injection will show you all the different issues, again, based on severity. Going back to the same issue, which incidentally be also a command injection issue, I can see that solving this issue will have an impact on those 4 techniques, which means that solving this issue will reduce my exposure on those 4 different techniques. And I can, of course, from this point, understand all the vulnerabilities. So I list all the vulnerabilities. We can also include external intelligence coming from MITRE, coming from NVD, the exploit in the wild, get you better understanding. If you want to do a more research, you can do it directly from the system. And of course, we can also show you additional information. One of the important aspects is that we can show you which application this package belongs to. If we go for the applications page, since we're having a map of the entire pipeline bill of material, what we're able to show you is that we're automatically mapping your application based on business priority, as Dana mentioned before. What we're showing you here is that, in this case, the bank website for demonstration environment is a critical application. It has a high score that we automatically calculated based on unique users, committed, less commit, and so on. You can also modify that. And if you do want to focus primarily on these top applications for you, first of all, we're mapping the application risk based on Oscar. So we're taking a step into that specific application, your, let's say, crown jewel, or the application that everybody's putting their interest in, and allowing you to see the exposure, the risk of that application map into the different techniques and tactics. And we're also prioritizing these issues for you. So you can see that I have a total of 97 issues, but only 4 of them are critical issues, 23 are high severity issues. I can start understanding that these issues coming from multiple areas. So it's not just a tool that's sending me an issue on secrets, or another tool that's sending me another issues on the open source, and another tool that's looking at my for example, registry or Artifactory and showing me issues there, and another tool for the cloud. So basically what happens is that I have multiple tools. I need to some way orchestrate them and then somehow connect everything to a single application or a project that I'm working on. So we're doing that for you automatically and giving you the ability to see, based on severity, the different issues based on the application. And as an example, we're also doing some of the work for you. And sometimes where the original tool will say that the severity of this issue is critical, we'll go on and check, for example, where this secret is exploitable or not. And in this case, it's inactive, which means that it's not exploitable, which means it's not really a high severity issue. It's actually information, because there's no way that an attacker will be able to exploit that specific secret. Let me give you one more example of what we're doing. And the other example is, okay, so let's say we're talking about the pipeline bill of materials. And now that I have the tool, I have the platform, I have the visualization, I start looking at the issues. I want to make sure that no new critical issues are being introduced into my pipeline. And that the application, when it's deployed, does not have it. So let's say, imagine that we fixed all the critical vulnerabilities. We've mapped them, you worked on them, the development people working together with you, you don't have any critical vulnerabilities, and you don't want to have any new ones. Now, this is the most important application for us. This is the one that I really want to enforce, making sure that every build doesn't have a critical vulnerability. So I can just go to pipeline settings and set, for example, as you can see here, critical severity to block, which means that you will see that new critical issues will be blocked. The code will not go into production. Also, developers will get the notification in their IDE. Okay, and that means that we can also show the developer the actual commit, the actual part of the code that created that critical vulnerability. And from that system, they can also understand, based on the issue. Let me give you another issue, for example. Based on the issue, they can get the description of the issue, the recommendation, additional information, and so on. So you can see also the owner in this case. You can see the commit, where it is in the code, who committed it. So we're going to provide you with a lot of information, even if you're not a security expert, to really understand what has gone wrong and to kind of help you skill up around that. The last thing I'd like to focus before we start addressing question is that for every application, besides showing the entire PBOM aspect, downloading the SBOM for it, we can also download something that we call the PBOM standardization. And that can work for you as part of project, also to share up as well. Or if you're getting code from a third party, then let's see what this code has brought into. So once I click download PBOM, I can get it for specific applications or specific artifacts in that aspect if they're connected to OX. And once it's finished generating the PBOM, it will download this certification for me. Now, I've prepared a PBOM, of course, in advance. Let me just open it and share it with you. Okay. Let's do, yeah, I'm just finding the right window. I think it's this one. Yeah, here we go.
Good job.
So it's this one. Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
so what you can see here is that we're also generating a pipeline bill of materials certificate, which means that every application that you develop or that you actually get, any binary that you get that has the OX platform connected, will be able to generate that, and will show you the deployment, will show you the path, will show you the different issues that it brought along. So it really allows you to bring a report either in a PDF format, HTML, or JSON if you want to integrate it with other products or other solutions. And for the critical issues, we're also bringing in the details. So we can really come in and understand the vulnerabilities, the severity factors, really get a report that helps you understand what is going on with this application, what risks do I have, and which areas should I focus on first to solve those risks, reduce the attack surface, and make sure that I'm less vulnerable to attacks.
I think this is important, Boaz, just to reinforce, because there is a lot of international participants I'm noticing on the call. But here in the U.S., there is regulatory requirements issued by the Biden administration for certain industries to be able to produce at any time this type of information. So, if you're part of a U.S. company, it's either here now or it's coming, right? And it's just one of the many aspects of OX that can be taken care of immediately.
Yes. That's very good.
So I guess we'll open up for questions.
Yes. Okay, so first question. Can you speak about the deployment of OX and how to best deploy the solution in DevSec environments? It's a very good question.
Can I try to answer it? We got you.
You got me?
We got you.
My headphones stopped working, so I'm moving to. So you got me? You hear me? Everything's okay? Okay.
Everything's okay. Everything's great, Boaz. We can hear you. So let me take this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me take this one. Right. We've spent some time on the dashboard. We've gone into the deep dive. I mean, what we've learning from several hundred conversations now, both with prospects and customers, is that, I mean, directionally speaking, they're buying into the vision. They see it as an ability to bring AppSec and development closer together. And it's a broad vision. But they also, more importantly, I think, see specific areas of the software supply chain that they could address today with the immediate coverage we offer. Because in a lot of cases, I think our meetings, they're buying into the vision, and then they stop us into a certain area of the software supply chain, and just recognize that it aligns very well with something that's currently on their risk registry or risk assessment as being code red and something they need to fix immediately for the supply chain. That's an easy way to get started, right? And then from there, slowly build into the vision, connect more things along the way. And like the promise we talked about, start to build towards maturity and close the gap between application and development. So we're certainly seeing the motion where companies are saying, wow, I can get all of this for that. I can cover a lot of my gaps immediately with Ox. So that's one way. In other cases where you might have a more enterprise company, they're seeing, they've bought a lot of tools. They're seeing them as unorchestrated, and they're trying to gain control of that orchestration, as well as just what we'd refer to as automated pipeline governance. It's sort of their next step in the evolution. So there's something for everyone here at Ox if you develop software. So Boaz, anything to add there?
Yes, let me show the dashboard for one more second. And the first thing, if you talk about best practices, in a lot of companies and a lot of customers that we're speaking with, what's missing is sometimes as simple as the visualization of the entire pipeline bill of material. It's kind of getting a feeling that, okay, I have control, a feeling that I can see this and understand, okay, this is my current situation with all the tools and the alerts and the kind of a noise that I have, get a clear picture, simplify the thing, and then, okay, I can start at any place that I want. As Dana mentioned, I can do multiple things. I can start anywhere, but I'm feeling that I'm in a controlled situation. Then, I'm orchestrating a few tens of thousands of issues, and where do I start from? Let's move to the next question.
Great connectors question. Go ahead and take it away, Boaz.
Oh, yeah. So how is it? It's a good question because we don't work in an agent mode. It's an agentless mode. So let me show you in the dashboard very quickly. Going to the connector page. Let's say we want to connect our source control. So you can see GitHub is already connected, but it's very simple and very easy. Either I can use my identity provider, or I can use a token. And then, of course, I have the requirements. In this case, once I have the token, I have the URL, I just click connect, and that's it. I'm in. Same thing for an example, the CI/CD. Okay, can token or GitHub app, in this case that we're using. We can also connect our cloud, AWS. We have an automatic installation. If you want to go through the manual one, we can guide you through the manual one. But through an automatic one, you can easily install it. It usually takes about 15 minutes to connect the different aspects if you have the tokens in hand, and will automatically start creating that pipeline bill of materials for you.
That's to reiterate, we're constantly adding new connectors based on the demand out there in the marketplace. Especially with big companies we're starting to service, they have a lot of tools. A lot of those tools, they just have to have part of the pipeline bill of materials, and we're quickly evolving the connectors as part of the development lifecycle on our end. Mm-hmm. Next question.
One thing, yeah. Let's address this question, and I'll add another piece of a tip for all of our audience afterwards. So, can you provide some best practices for implementing Ox to block critical issues? That's a good question, and it kind of takes into what I've shown earlier around the pipeline, enforcement. So the first thing we can do is we really can look at two specific applications based on really the organizational or the business priority or any kind of other priority that you're creating yourself. And then let's start focusing on new issues. And we're making a separation between old issues and new issues, because sometimes we have old issues, even though they're critical, they will take a lot more time to solve. which means that I want to continue to develop, but I don't want to introduce any new critical issues. So in the pipeline block, as I shown you before, you just mark the areas, the categories that you don't want to have any critical issues, and we will be able to block those for you. Now, let's say we want to create a workflow. So another thing that we're adding, and will come up really shortly, okay, is the ability to create your own workflow. So it really is something that from a best practice implementation, starting from the monitoring, starting to open tickets or even committing PRs, to actually blocking new critical issues. So we don't want those in our production, to really be able to start blocking at some point even old issues. When we think that, okay, right now we have good coverage, we know that there are a few old issues that we really must solve, let's get this on. And once we are there, we can rest assured that every development that is being built and then being created, the artifact, and then being deployed, doesn't have those critical issues. Okay, so we have another question from Tzvi. Can you please explain the process of continuous monitoring and how OX.Security stays up to date with emerging vulnerabilities and threats? How quickly can a potential risk be identified and addressed? It's a very good question. And let me start with it, and I'll let Dana to continue. So the first thing is that we're doing periodic scans, which means that we're constantly scanning every tool, or we're getting information from tools that connected, and we're scanning the source control, the CI/CD, and everything that goes. We're doing it periodically. You can also manually, in case there is let's say a critical commit or a really important commit that you want to deliver right now. So once you've delivered it and you don't have the pipeline enforcement set up, then you can scan now. It will automatically scan. Since we're bringing intelligence from external sources, we're doing it constantly, which means that we're constantly looking and having the ability to, once, let's say you have an open source package, that open source package doesn't have any critical issue, but let's say that tomorrow there is a new critical issue published and we know about it, we're going to automatically bring it to you at the same place, at the same periodic scan. Either you scan it manually or we're doing it for you. So we're continuously adding more and more information, even when there is no issue for now, or let's say there is a new attack in the wild, we can increase the severity based on what we're finding.
Yeah, great answer, Boaz. Just to reinforce, I mean, what Boaz said, I mean, when you connect Ox, you're also connecting to our, infrastructure that we use to, identify all these emerging threats, along with any of your existing tooling that you would have connected and aggregated along with us. So you can be rest assured there's coverage at some level.
Yeah. Another question that we have here. So besides practicing as a security consultant, I'm also immigration consultant working with client startup project. I would love to know for startup in medical or fintech, how your product can help enhance the security of their product or service. You want to start, Dana?
Well, the first thing I thought of, if it's a startup, we love startups. You can start up for free with Ox. It's right on our website. And you can choose to elect to take our demonstration data or wire up your environment. And you're working with medical device companies. As an example, there are certain regulatory requirements that we could help you meet day one. And we appreciate you, of course, serving the common good, in these medical device companies. So keep in mind that if you're under a certain size, have at Ox. And then, once you hit a certain trajectory, would probably end up giving you a call, seeing how it goes, how's it going, and understand, how we can work together more effectively. But, at the end of the day, it's available for you. All the functionality that you've seen today is available for you as well. So I'm not sure how to pinpoint on any one advantage that you may get from the solution, but it's there for you to go try.
Yeah. And let me continue with that point. So all you need to do really to start is browse to OX.Security, OX.Security, and click on Start Free. So you can get a lot of information and read a lot of nice articles and blogs and kind of look at what we're doing. But when you click Start Free, it will automatically take you to the platform. You'll be able to start creating that kind of organization. In this case, I'm already registered, so you can see the environment, but you can see how easy it is. So really, in this case, what we want is just click Start Free, connect your source control. It's it doesn't really cost you anything. You don't really need to do too many things. You can connect your source control, you can connect your CI/CD, everything that you want, and it will start scanning that for you. And it's really gonna give you that first understanding of the entire environment, building you the P-bomb, especially for small startups. For small teams, it's free of charge. Start going at it. If you want to learn more, of course, you can always go and book a demo, and it will get to us, and we'll start and having that with you. We're gonna give a one-on-one session or with any one of your clients, so we can definitely help in that area as well.
I understand, Boaz, that there are more questions, but we are at time. For those of you out there, we're going to continue with the questions. If you're interested in what you've seen and have to leave, we understand, of course. Reach out. We'd love to, again, we care about your DevSecOps program. We want to know more and the maturity you feel you're at. And we can bring the right experts to the table to help you understand how we can best support you in your journey. So thank you for those who choose to elect to depart at this point. Otherwise, we're off to the next question.
Okay, let me read out the next question. Can you explain how Oscar can be used in risk analysis? It's a very good question. Let me go at it and share my screen again, so we'll have something in our eyes to view. What I want to start really here is really talking about Oscar. So the Oscar framework is mapped according to your environment. It's not a generalized. Framework, which means that what you're seeing here is actually a map of the risk in every tactic and technique here for that specific environment. So each environment will be different. And how do I do risk analysis? So first of all, based on different factors. So we've seen how we can look at an application and understand a specific application, critical and severity issues. We can look based on different categories. Here, we can look on different tactics. For example, one way is to start with, for example, the execution. So we don't want attackers to be able to execute different types of code. Either it's an SQL injection or a command injection in that sense. So we can really start from these areas and focus our attention specifically on these kind of areas. Or in other cases where my main concern is not execution, but I can see that, let's take another example. Let's take a compromised legitimate artifact. So we can see that there's no critical issues, but there's definitely a lot of issues. We're facing here almost 40 issues. So it's like a heat map for you, where you can see, okay, I have a lot of issues on this area. Let me go in and start understanding what are those issues and where they're coming from. So it really is something. For example, you can see here in this example that I can easily understand that there's a Docker image in this case that's found in Docker Hub, but not in CI/CD, which means that if I go to the application information, something is deployed, but it didn't come from my CI/CD. Now, it can be I don't know, accidental artifact that one of the developers built on the side and deployed, but it can also be something that is malicious in nature. So it really depends on where do I want to take this and where do I want to see, or where do I see my risk. So in this case, there's two areas in here that you can see, that one focusing on a specific tactic and then looking at the different techniques, reading articles and research and seeing how attackers are attacking similar company to yours and which type of techniques they're using, or treating it like a heat map and then looking at areas where there's a lot of issues and you want to understand, okay, what is the severity? Can I fix those issues fast? And so on and so forth. Okay, we can move to the next question. What should I look at from a developer perspective for fixing a security issue? Where can I find the relevant information to understand the root cause? Okay, that's a very good question. And not every developer is security oriented. Now, today we're seeing that more developers want to understand what in their code creates a security issue and how to be able to fix it. Now, we're not talking about really educating them. This is an entire program that should run along in every organization. But we really want to understand so we're not going to make the same mistake again. And how do I fix it? Because otherwise, I have to start going around and typing online and seeing where can I get the information. So let me go back to my dashboard and quickly jump into, for example, an issue. So let me take, again, open source security. I brought in a package. I'm bringing all that information for everyone to look at. First of all, the description. Secondly, we can go through the different vulnerabilities to understand what this package brings. Now, this is an easy example because it's a package. All I need to understand is which package should I upgrade to, and if it's safe, of course, for my application, that will solve all the vulnerabilities. It's an easy fix, really, it's an easy fix, but let's take something that's a bit more complicated in that sense, okay? So let's go to code security and go for a command injection in that sense. So we can see that command injection, we can see if it's reachable, exploitable, the damage, we can see the severity, we can see the area, but we can also see the code commit, okay? And we can see where it is at the code level. And what we can also share here is that you can see the file, you can see the Oscar mapping, the CWE in this case, the understanding the information, and of course the policy. So what I need to really fix here is really to provide, as you can see here, to provide the right part of code to fix this issue. Same thing with the, in this case, SQL injection. So really, I need to make sure that attackers are not able to insert their own code execution into that. So I need to put the guardrails in this case. And this is the part of code that needs to do it. And of course, if you can read the recommendation, what you can see to use prepared statement with parameterized queries instead of string formatting to prevent SQL injection. So we're actually telling the developers, this is what you need to bring, this is what you need to do. And of course, in some cases, we're also bringing YouTube videos. So even if you don't know what you need to do, there is actually a YouTube video here that explains that specific technique and how to solve it, or how to make sure that my code is not vulnerable. So we're also bringing that level of intelligence to that platform, and from here on, you can better understand what is going on in the execution. Okay. I think I know we're past the time. I don't see any other questions popping up. So I think it's time to wrap this. What do you think? You're on mute, Dana. I always wanted to say that.
Yeah. Perfect time to wrap it. Again, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you derive some value from this and your interest is piqued, right? We're at your service. We'd love to engage, understand more about your needs and your maturity model as it relates to DevSecOps. and perhaps there's a possibility that we can provide some value to you along the way. So nice to have everybody join us, and have a good week.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.